And we're on. Go Ute.
Hey, welcome into the Holy Rabble Show, where we see things from a crimson red and a BYU blue, royal blue perspective. I'm Wild Ute, and he's the BYU Bomber. How you doing today, Bomber?
I'm doing fantastic. Made it through the holidays.
Yeah,
Again, thanks one last time to all the veterans out there and their families. Appreciate them.
absolutely. Well, we've got a special guest with us today. It's Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com, 24/7 affiliate, and the K-State guru here over. How many years have you been covering K-State, Tim? Or maybe Tim or Fitz?
Fitz is fine. Let's see. We started our company in '98, but I went started a magazine up for a Wichita Eagle in '95, and I had been in the newspaper business before that. So, I mean, you go back to college. I don't want to add up the number of years because it's pretty close to 40. But my company's been around for 25 years covering K-State sports.
Very good, very good. Well, we wanted to bring you on to have a discussion about the Big 12, the University of Utah, what's going on in the Pac with the realignment stuff, and even today's news of Colorado and all the smoke going on with them really making a serious consideration of jumping over fairly soon, it seems like, in the next few days. So before we even get into that, though, I would like to get your perspective on, like, how did this Big 12, Pac-12 drama really begin? Like, what was kind of the genesis of this and stuff in your view?
That's a great point. I've been covering realignment. We talk about covering K-State. I mean, I was doing this job when the Big 12 was formed. So I started off covering the Big 8. So I've literally been covering realignment since day one. I've been through it a lot. I've been through it from the perspective the entire time of the Pac-12, the hunted, the one that's going to get ravaged. And so I kind of see the signs. I understand the signs. And the uncertainty about the media deal and the move by Brett Yormark to jump the line, so to speak, and get the Big 12 one done first, really set this all in motion. Because if you look at the available media windows out there with the SEC and Big 10 expanding, Big 12 took a lot of what was left. There's just not much out there right now. And so I think all of us that have studied this for a long time knew that the Pac-12 was going to have a real problem finding the right pieces to make this work for them.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of partners, historical partners, are out. Fox appears out, ESPN appears out. It's kind of looking like Apple's the last chance, and maybe sublicensing some games if we can hold together as far as the Pac goes. And I mean, it's just so uncertain right now, especially with this Colorado and Arizona, possibly Arizona State and Utah move here.
Yeah.
So here's a question I kind of wanted to get your perspective on. Okay. So if Colorado were to go to the Big 12 and say it's tomorrow, what's next? What do you think happens next?
I think the conventional wisdom is that once someone goes, others will go, whether that's Washington and Oregon to the Big 10, which I don't think is done, as some people like to say.
Yeah.
Or Arizona certainly following into the Big 12. But it could be a little bit like when Colorado left the Big 12 the first time around. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, it was an outlier in this conference, and in some ways it's an outlier on the very edge of the Pac-12. So it's easier to backfill at that point. But I think everyone's waiting for that first shoe to drop. And it looks like it will be Colorado maybe this week. And we'll see what follows. But I would think Arizona, and then in like Arizona State, would come too. And I keep coming back to this. Does Brett Yormark want 4 more out west, or the 4 total with BYU? Does that achieve what he wants to achieve? And then he'll look to the east maybe to pick up another partner. I don't know. I'm fascinated by what he'll do because he's a free thinker. He's not bound by normal conventions of college athletics administration. He sees things from a completely different perspective. And I think that'll be that's been good for the Big 12 so far, and it could take us to some interesting places.
So what's like the feel for like the combo? Like, what's the ideal combo? Like, just in your mind's eye, like, what would be the best case scenario based on what you understand and what you've maybe heard too?
Well, honestly, and I told you this before we went on the air, my team of the school I've always wanted is Utah. I think it's the most Big 12-like of the institutions. The passion from the fans really fits, what you see in this conference. I think BYU's had a little sampling of it from the passion from the Baylor fan base that they've witnessed recently. But I think the reason why they're focused on the four corner schools, which it's a little bit overused, but the reason they're kind of focused on that, ironically, in all of this conference realignment is geography. Yeah. It connects really cleanly to the Big 12. But in the course of the last 10 years, since really all this upheaval started for the Big 12 with Colorado and Nebraska leaving, then Missouri and A&M leaving the following year, it's gone from a shift from talking about markets. You want to have this market and that market and that market, because this isn't cable driven. This isn't subscription driven for ESPN anymore. And what we hear from ESPN executives is they want rivalries.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So the four corners give you that. I mean, I originally wanted the three schools and not Colorado because there's still a lot of bad feelings around here about Colorado coming back to the conference after they kind of kicked off the first amount of realignment, the first actual Big 12 member to kind of say, we're out of here. So it is about, having the series between Utah and BYU in the conference would be huge, as is Arizona and Arizona State. People tune in for rivalry games. It just has that heat.
Yeah, what would Yormark do with that too? I mean, Bomber and I've talked before. I mean, think about the Holy War in the Big 12 with his pizzazz. Yeah. I love that idea because, like, being in the pack and stuff, it feels like it's been really stale. That's like the word for really, outside of playing like a USC, and now USC is gone now. This doesn't really feel like there's a lot of momentum, and really all the momentum, is in the Big 12 court right now.
Yeah. I just don't feel the same kind of passion for college football outside of, SC and Utah and probably Oregon, Washington a little bit too. But from the Pac-12 teams, as I see from Big 12 top to bottom, even Kansas, when they get going a little bit, they'll show up for games. It takes a kind of a meteor hitting the earth to make that happen, but they're in one of those periods right now. Their fans are showing up.
It seems like you get some fan bases in the pack, like your Oregon States, your Utahs, your U of A's, like the Northern California schools, not so much. Some Wazoo fan passion and everything, but not the same as the Big 12, especially as we know, like on Twitter.
I feel so bad for Oregon State and Washington State because they're Kansas State and Iowa State. Yeah. They're the two that were going to get left out. Kansas State and Iowa State were the two that were probably going to get left out. The Big 12 got left behind. Now it's them, and it's clear. Again, the odd thing about all this is geography is what's winning the day. And honestly, because, Washington and Oregon just haven't shown the level of interest in the Big 12.
Yeah.
My question goes to the fans. Utah has, and we've talked about this at length since we started this show 2 months ago, but Utah's fans have really put the school in a tough spot for the way that they've talked derogatorily about the Big 12 and some of the stuff that has been said about education and research versus truck stop conferences and not very smart schools, which we all know, us three know that's nonsense. But you've mentioned on several different posts, Fitz, and how strongly you feel about that attitude. Give us your third eye, very far separated view of how you look at that and kind of where does Utah go from here?
Well, you have to understand the perspective of the Big 12 right now. They've been through major upheaval. 6 of their original 12 members are gone. In the process of, essentially, it was a Big 8 expansion. Even though it was a new conference, it was the 8 existing members of the Big 8 bringing in 4 Texas schools. And now 6 of those are gone, including longtime rivals such as Nebraska and Missouri, and now Oklahoma. And I think the overriding feeling amongst all the Big 12 members is, and we felt that from the 4 schools coming in, we want members that are invested in the conference, not just passing through, not just, this is where we're going to park for now, that actually say, you know what, this conference has something about it that is promising. Because I've never seen the Big 12, and this goes back to 1996 and the founding, I've never seen the Big 12 more united than it is right now. Everyone seems to be on the same page. Maybe Kansas is the one outlier there because they keep eyeing the Big 10, but that's not going to happen. Everyone kind of wants to be in this conference. Particularly this expansion allows the Eastern school, to kind of get tied in more, particularly if the ACC cracks and comes open. And going west now, Look, I personally think they shouldn't have added Houston, but I know why they did it. It was a defensive move to keep them away from other programs or from other conferences. I would have been a Boise fan or someone like that, but they ended up with Houston, and I think we can really see clearly now that they would like to have 4 West, 4 in the old Big 8, 4 in the old Southwest, and 4 out East, and maybe 4 more from the out East if the ACC opens up.
It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Like
for scheduling, it does. It really does.
Yeah, and like in fan passion, like fits and everything. Like you're talking about Louisville, possibly Pitts, NC State's, Georgia Tech's, possibly. Like it just seems like Big 12 schools to me. So let me ask you a little bit more about I guess the idea of like the Big 12 stability. Do you think that stability is just because of like the lack of options going to like the Power 2, right?
Yeah. They've been picked clean, for the most part, and that could be seen as a sign that, well, you don't have any brands left. But if you start looking at the TV ratings, for example, the TCU, Kansas State Big 12 championship, other games, they've done an incredible job of growing these brands. And I think what the Big 12 brings that the national audiences have begun to understand is it's a fun brand of football. Yeah. It really is fun. It's fun to bet on as we move into this world of sports betting. That's why I think UNLV's in the conversation on the fringes, but in the conversation for more Western realignment, because that market and what it brings to your exposure is huge. So it's evolved a lot, but the conference has really kind of grown the brand of the conference more than simply come in and watch these teams play. The ratings were reflected in the contract. The fact that the contract grew even after the departure of Oklahoma and Texas said when they went to the table, they went to the raw numbers, they saw that the engagement factor of these fan bases, and that's another thing that's brand new to this. Are your fans engaged on social media? Do they watch the games? Do they travel to games? And the Big 12 scores highly in all that.
How crazy are fans?
Yeah,
it matters though. It does matter.
Yeah,
I've heard a lot. Like speaking of this point still too, I've heard a lot that if Utah came into the Big 12, that a lot of Big 12 fans are concerned about their commitment, right? And like in jumping, maybe if they ever got a chance at the P2 and stuff. But like I would just like to say that I think that everyone's kind of in that same boat, right? Like if Utah make the way to the Big 12, I think that any of the Big 12 schools would go to the Big 10 or the SEC if they got invited. I mean, it's good business sense and stuff. And I can
it's money.
Yeah, it's money, right? And like I can tell you that Utah's a committed school. Like, look how loyal the Ute fans are to the Pac, right? And everything that's gone on here. That would transfer over to the Big 12 if Utah came over. I mean, Utah would be a good citizen. I know a lot of folks don't really think that because of the social media spats, but I really do think that Utah would be a solid add for the Big 12.
Now, like I said, this is the school that I thought, out of the ones that were tangible for the Big 12, I thought would be on the shopping list, if you want to say that. Utah jumps out just in part because BYU's in the conference too. I want that rivalry in the conference.
Yeah. All right, Fitz, we're going to go to the Twitter. Okay, we're going to go to Twitter stuff. Okay, what is your experience? I'm going to ask your experience first with BYU fans and primarily on Twitter. Like social media spaces for BYU fans. What's your experience so far?
Good. I don't think I was engaged with these fan bases when the expansion first happened as I am now, since I'm doing a lot of my own daily delivery videos on expansion that kind of found my channel. I sense that BYU could become, no offense here, Texas light in thinking that everything is about them, because this is a massive brand. This is clearly the biggest brand in the conference from day one, just because of the international reach of that. But the Big 12 is kind of done being held hostage by a big brand. Texas was a miserable partner from day one. They've caused all the problems that we've seen in this conference, and there's been a real sense of relief to be done with that, almost like a bad relationship. You got the trophy wife, but boy, it wasn't worth it. So I think it'll be good. I think BYU is so happy to be coming into finally getting their break into a conference. I think there'll be a little honeymoon here, and then we'll see what shakes out.
Fitz, you'd be shocked at how many Big 12 stickers were out here. For years
That's
and
awesome.
years, for years and
That's
years,
awesome.
BYU fans laughed at Ute fans for having Pac-12 stickers like everywhere, right?
That's how it
And then
works.
all of a sudden, it switched. It switched. So, Bomber, I'm curious about your perspective of that too. How do you think BYU is gonna? Are they going to be a good citizen? Like, how do you think that's going to shake out here?
Yeah, there's not going to be a bigger cheerleading group than Brigham Young's going to be for the Big 12 for the foreseeable. I'm talking decades. There's no chance. It's not our league. The Big 12 has got schools that have been playing football over 100 years. BYU has nothing on them. So I think any concern that you're getting from that is being ginned up in social media and on newspaper articles and radio channels, and they're trying to generate clicks. I think any BYU person that you get on our shows or on my Big 12 Mafia show, you're hearing good citizens. You're not wanting anybody that is taking ownership for anything that the Big 12 has. So I think that's a whole bunch of crap that people are stirring up. Frankly, I've seen it from Utah people saying, you just wait, Big 12. BYU's going to show you they're going to be the bad guy eventually. And that's a bunch of crap. So
there was some chatter back in the Mountain West days about that citizenship and stuff. And I don't know. It seems like.
Well, you got to realize, though, that league was Utah and BYU until they brought TCU in. That's all there was, right? In the old Mountain West and the WAC days. So it's a whole different animal now. You can't compare.
TCU, bringing that back into the fold. TCU had some great games with the Utes. Oh, man, those.
Right.
I mean, there's some history there, right?
Yeah, K-State's got that going now with TCU. I mean, this last year, 2 incredible football games between the programs. It was really fun.
And I think they're only going to get better. I think the quality of play in the entire league is going up. It's not going down. There's no lower median that everybody's lowering themselves to. The quality of these schools and the programs they're putting together are very strong, and it's only get stronger.
Definitely. All right, here's the one, okay, on Twitter. We're going back to the Twitter. What is your experience with Utah fans? And social media?
Horrible. From day one, as soon as you bring up Utah, maybe coming to the Big 12, and not even like, I mean, so many people are trying to say that Big 12's trying to break up the Pac-12. I guess my analogy to that is you're blaming the lifeboats for what the iceberg did. I mean, and from day one, just the amount of hostility Utah fans have shown on social media. And I'm telling you what, it's not just that one account. It's been a whole wave of fans. And it doesn't take long to interact with them, where pretty soon they throw academics back. And you know what? That's just such a foreign concept. It's such a Pac-12 driven idea that the conference is about academics. And I understand the whole research thing. I understand the different culture. And there's some of that in the Big Ten, but this is an athletic conference, and that's kind of where the Big 12's always been kind of focused on that. Is there a bottom line for conference wanting someone in a conference? I mentioned Boise earlier. I think academics is probably a reason why the presidents were like, because Boise's not known for that. Neither is UNLV. So that, there is a level of that, but also those academics, if the Big 12 takes 2 schools and the Pac-12 wants to backfill, they're going to have problems backfilling because of those standards.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt. Do you think that the Ute fan behavior on social media elsewhere would impact the Utes' chances with getting in the Big 12, like through like Yormark administration standpoint, in your view?
I mentioned this on Twitter the other day that I actually ran into an old friend who's a Big 12 associate commissioner. And he brought him up. He goes, how about those Utah fans on social media? So the Big 12 office knows. They've seen it. They've experienced it. I hope not, but it's tangible. I know people want to say Twitter isn't real. Well, Twitter's pretty real. I mean, it can be a reflection of what's going on out there. Sometimes a hyper version of it, but the Big 12 office is aware of that. But also, what we don't really understand is the level of engagement behind the scenes. We've had someone try to tell us repeatedly there's been no discussions between the Big 12 and Pac-12 schools, and it's been going on. I mean, every school is going to do that. You better touch all the bases here and make sure you got everything covered if the worst happens. So what's that level of engagement with Utah? I don't know that. I know that there has been some level of contact, but I don't know what that actual contact and the level of communication, what Utah folks are saying. If the worst happens, we would be interested. And that's really all the Big 12's been talking about. If the worst happens, we're here. And it's now just turned into this kick the can down the road kind of game.
Well, if you're Utah, really, what do you do? I mean, we've been talking about this for weeks here. Like, what are your options? If CU leaves, okay, U of A leaves, if ASU leaves, then all of a sudden Oregon and Washington, they went out, right? The iceberg, that Big Ten. And so what are we going to get stuck with, Cal and Stanford and Oregon State, Washington State? I mean, what kind of media money are you talking then? Like, let's be honest about that. It's just not doable. It's not doable unless I think that the real issue here with the Pac is Oregon and Washington's commitment. I really do.
Right. And that's why the Big 12 is not really interested in them, even though they've shown some interest. They're always like, well, yeah, but the Big 10 and the Big, like I said, the Big 12 doesn't want to hear that. They want people that want to be involved.
Yeah. So Bomber and I talked about this the other day. What's your stance on this? Like I brought up a counterpoint to what you're talking about too, about the social media engagement and everything and the negative interaction from Ute fans. Do you believe like in such thing as like, bad press is good press, right? The attention. Do you think that Yormark is the kind of person that would love to play with just like that bad guy narrative and stuff and drive that negative interactions, because it is interaction and engagement? Like my view is that I think he's the kind of guy that says, I don't care. I'm from New York. I don't care. I want to hear it, right? Like throw that at me and everything. I don't necessarily, in my view, I think that it actually might be a selling point more for the Utes to come in the Big 12 just because of the engagement. I know that's not a popular take, but that's kind of how I see it a little bit.
Well, I'll say this, the guy's kind of charmed. I mean, he really is. He came in, the previous administration, once it was free of Texas's meddling, did a great job adding 4 schools. Back the last time they expanded, they wanted Louisville and Cincinnati in the conference too to get back to 12. And Texas said no. And the reason why, they were afraid of losing their lock on the voting if you brought in too many outside schools. Brett Yormark wanted to push his way into New York. He wants to have a presence in New York. That's the same thinking why I think he wants Las Vegas. He wants these big markets that everyone passes through. And then what happens is Kansas State from Manhattan gets sent to New York for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8, filled with a team with New York kids, with a point guard that puts on an absolute spectacle who's from Harlem. I mean, it's charmed. Brett Yormark had the New York media eating out of his hand. It was absolutely incredible. And with that timing, he announces a Rucker Park camp thing where they're going to start taking coaches and players into Rucker Park to teach kids. Naquan Tomlin, one of K-State's basketball players, never played high school basketball. He grew so fast in high school. He just played at Rucker Park and then went to junior college. So his first organized game in his home city was at Madison Square Garden, which is incredible. Now you see Yormark pivoting towards the Mexico play, which I'm actually kind of cool on it, but I'm trusting him here. But you stop and think about this. If you add Arizona State to go with Texas Tech and Houston, maybe San Diego State, they're in the conversation too. You literally are getting the whole border states, with the exception of New Mexico. Sorry, New Mexico, nobody cares. You're getting the whole border states, and it makes a lot of sense. He's always thinking outside the box of what we normally do, and that includes the basketball play, which I think is going to be brilliant when he does that.
So outside the box, okay. I'm thinking here for 10 years in the line or longer, okay? So let me ask you this, Fitz, all right. Do you think this hot streak by the Big 12 is sustainable, or is this simply Brett Yormark's shine? Like, that's what I'm thinking, like as a Ute fan, like if we get in the Big 12, like does it go back to Bob Bowlesby days when Yormark leaves? Like how sustainable is this with that New York shine, the cool factor? And that's just something I've thought about quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, you do wonder if Yormark's in for the long haul, which I don't think. I think he's a fixer. He's going to come in and fix this and move on and pass it on to someone, probably of his choosing, if everything goes well. But I do want to touch on this basketball thing, because we've all been told for so many years that these contracts are football, and I bought into that. And then he asked bluntly, what percentage of this contract is basketball? I mean, Big 12 basketball is pretty good. and he's told 10 to 20%. He's like $5 or $6 million of the new contract. 25 million is football. So he goes to one of his outside consultants, and they do a study, and they think Big 12 basketball is worth about 25 million a school. So if football's 25 and basketball's 25, he's looking at a way to close the gap on the Big 10 and SEC in a manner that doesn't require them getting remarkably better in football, because no matter how good you are in football, you don't have Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. The brands, those brands that go back to the 60s and 70s, they're the value of them. UCLA still has that shine on them, and they stink as of late, but it's still a huge historic brand. So he's looking at basketball. That's why Gonzaga. That's why UConn. Villanova's been discussed. If the ACC comes into play, Duke goes way up on the Big 12 list for wannabes. So we'll see. We'll see what all pans out here. But I think in his perfect world, 20 football, 24 basketball, way too big a conference in my world. But he seems to know what he's doing. I'm willing to admit that Brett Yormark is a lot smarter than me.
Oh yeah, he's a smart guy.
I like that a lot. I'm going to bring in Robert. Robert is one of our frequent viewers, and we couldn't get him in on our Friday night show that we had a ad hoc show. We normally are on Mondays and Saturdays, but because of the holiday, we did Friday and Saturday, and now we're meeting today. So we invited Robert to come back. Robert, did you have any questions you wanted to bring up with Fitz today?
The only thing I really see what Fitz was talking about was when he was mentioning about Villanova, about the basketball part. I'm like, if you're going to throw Villanova, why not bring Temple? Bringing back that rivalry between Villanova and Temple into the Big 12, because they used to be hated basketball rivals.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Yeah. I think he'll shy away.
And I come from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think he'll shy away from a football school. UConn might back into the Big 12 just because they want another Eastern school. It's in ESPN's backyard. But Villanova for Philly, honestly, St. John's for that New York market. When you think Brett Yormark, always think New York market. How can he get his toe in there? And I think they'd only take 4. That Gonzaga brand is so huge up there. But we'll see what plays out.
There's either one of those schools.
Yeah, there's 3 phases of this thing.
St. John's, St. Joe's would be good. Yeah. And plus they're rivals of Villanova too, so it doesn't hurt. But in my case, I kind of want that rivalry to get back together because it's not been together for a long time.
And again, it's about rivalries in the current market.
So Fitz, I've got a question.
Exactly.
How in the world, in this new age, can the basketball be worth as much as football? Like, I get like the TV viewership, but what has to change for like in television contracts to make that possible? Because right now basketball is such a low portion.
The thing he's going to do is he's going to break it separately.
Right.
You'll bid on football, and I imagine then it'll be basketball and the other sports. He'll essentially break football out. That's what I hear a lot of Big 12 fans. Well, why would we pay Gonzaga out of our football? No, that's totally separate money. There will be 2 different pools of money that if you play both football and basketball, you'll be in both pools. It's complex. There's a lot of moving parts of that I don't know how he'll do it, but he has so much momentum now. I think he understands I got to make some of this happen right away. But I keep seeing this. You mentioned his, trying to get the name out there. I saw again, he continues to talk to Gonzaga. And look, I think that's just a media play. That's not going to happen until this upcoming contract is over, I don't believe, when they can break basketball out separately.
Yeah. And I just have one last question really for Fitz here. This is my last one. In your view, what's like a realignment driver that people aren't talking about that's super important?
Wow, a realignment driver that people aren't talking about. It's really this transition between platforms from being, on linear TV, however you want to describe that, to streaming. I'm a big fan of streaming. I think we're heading towards streaming. I just don't think you want to be the first one to dive into it, like the Pac-12 might have to,
Right.
because I think my generation certainly, and even a little bit younger, are trained to still flip through the channels. Look, I have YouTube TV, so it's just like cable, even though it's streaming. You kind of feel like it's cable, and switching between platforms until that's mastered by the makers of the TV, where you can effortlessly toggle through apps without going back and forth and going in and out of apps. When you can kind of go to platform easily, I think streaming will be much more tangible in sports, whether we're talking NFL, NBA, or college sports.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get we've got some time here. That went pretty quick. I think what we want to do is do some comments from people that we have some pretty loyal listeners, and I think as much as we try to get them engaged, we do that just like you do, Fitz. You know, we want to engage with our fans, and it's not our show, it's for them. So
yeah,
let's start. First of all, I don't want to forget, Larry gave us a nice positive saying if BYU with them joining the Big 12, I think that's going to do really good for the BYU brand, and I think it's going to help the league in total. What do you think about the Holy War rivalry? What do you think about that? Do you see Brett Yormark really leaning into that if this ends up happening?
I hope so. I mean, I just can't imagine that the hostile intent of whether it's 100 Twitter users or 20 will stop the invitation. I think the real question here is what's going on behind with the administrators. Is there kind of a standoffishness that will honestly turn off Brett Yormark? But I think that game would be so good for the conference. It's played every year, right? I mean,
not anymore.
Well, it hasn't been because
it's
been on and off because they were in the Pac-12, right? And it was in a conference game. So the idea would be they come back into the league. Now you play that on an annual basis and really lean into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I'd love it.
Yeah, Yormark was also at the backyard brawl when West Virginia was facing Pitt, and they said Yormark was really interested in that rivalry game. So he might have that. Like, this might be something to help us as a 12 conference.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, I agree. BR, he says, I see Brett Yormark turning some of these rivalries into entertainment events.
Heck
We spoke about that, where maybe you have rivalry weeks, and each week would get a predominance of the advertising. You know, you have maybe a pre-show that you could do before each one of these rivalry games, and if you pick up Arizona and Arizona State, that's a rivalry.
Or a rivalry showcase, something like that.
Right. Exactly. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, the Big Ten used to do that a lot, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, unfortunately, K-State's rival Kansas, there hasn't been much heat in that rivalry. I think K-State's won 11 straight in that series, so.
Oh, wow.
Although Lance Light will get it cooking. He'll get it going if he's
heated, it seems like, on the b-ball front.
What's that?
On the basketball front, it seems like it's a little bit more heated, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a little more balanced there. But of course, KU has dominated the conference completely in basketball.
Yeah, definitely.
Taylor, he's given us a comment about Utah wanting to stay in the Pac-12 because they've been winning. Obviously, that's true. Why leave something if you don't have to?
Guys, I'm just telling you here. Like, what are we going to win here? If these schools leave, we're behind, and Oregon and Washington leave. Seriously, who are we beating? Come on, like, we need to be real about exposure.
Yeah.
Future, the long-term future. This program is not going to get better. I don't care if we never lose, but like, if we're playing in like a Mountain West type of conference, I'm serious. Like, we got to think about the 5, 10, 15.
That's what I was telling Oregon fans. I was telling Oregon fans the same thing about that. You pretty much, once USC and UCLA, what brings the eyeballs to your conference, leave, then what's going to happen when those eyeballs are not really looking at you like they once did?
Totally applicable to the
meaning things are going to go downward. They're not going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Larry is frustrated with ignorant fans. He is not happy with some of the fan engagement that's been done from some of the outlier Utah fans. He doesn't like some of the stuff that was pointed directly at the Big 12, and for that matter, anything that went back to the Pac-12 wasn't great either. But this is Larry basically saying he doesn't like it, and I don't think anybody here on this call
Larry's a Ute fan.
support that.
He's a diehard Ute fan.
That's what I said. Larry is saying Utah fans, some of the stuff that they've done on social media has not been great.
What's the thing is, like, Ute fans face to face are saying this type of stuff. This is just on social media, on Twitter, and like I know it's more than a few accounts, but I work with a lot of BYU people, right? And no one's talking like this in person. No one's going to mistreat anybody from the Big 12 in person. I just wish that would stop. It needs to stop.
Agreed.
There's nothing wrong with a good truck stop.
I actually like pilots and
Definitely.
Flying J's.
We got a Flying J pretty close.
Yeah, I like those.
You know, the funny thing is this conference is now a lot about Buc-ee's. I don't know if you know what a Buc-ee's is. It's a Texas thing that's spread through the South.
I know what Buc-ee's is.
They're the most.
I know Buc-ee's. I live in Texas, so.
Ridiculous convenience store. It's like a shopping center, but they don't allow trucks. That's the funny part about it. It's like the giant truck stop, but no trucks. They don't allow semis in. So
Okay.
They can make the Buc-ee's Beaver like the Big 20.
Again, this is to you, Ute. What do you think about them staying in the weakened Pac-12 just so that they have a easier path to the tournament?
Hey, this is my response to that. Like, you seriously think that in the future that it's going to just be easy to get in the playoff if we're in a weekend conference? Like, I know that's what we're talking about today, but like, think 5-10 years in the future. If we're in a watered down conference and we lose like one game, like, we're probably not going to get in the playoff. Like, don't just assume that we're automatically going to get in if we win a weekend down Pac. So I'm just saying, I want the Utes to be in.
Also, for example, is.
And I think that we're moving to a Power 3.
Yeah, even for example,
the momentum's on the Big 12 side to be that Power 3, the third conference in the Power 3. That's my response.
Yes. Same thing with the Pac-12. When you think about it, even if you do make it in, who cares if you're going to get eliminated in the first round? Because you're playing in a weak conference, even if you do make it in the playoff. I think that's just really short. That's what I say.
I think it's short-sighted. So if that's the only one, it's dumb.
Like, think about recruiting. I mean, like, how's recruiting going to go? You know,
Blake is saying, the daily delivery. Rock Chalk, still love your channel.
Yeah, that daily delivery videos I do started off as a pandemic thing. Like, what are we going to do for content? I couldn't leave the house because of my cancer situation. So I was just like doing videos in my house, and suddenly they just absolutely took off, and now they're kind of a staple of our coverage. I do a lot of Big 12 stuff on there along with K-State.
That's fantastic. I love to hear that. Larry's saying, he's talking to Taylor here. Unfortunately, I believe Oregon and Washington are about to finish off the Pac. I don't think anybody is denying that. If Colorado leaves, then I think Washington and Oregon are hoping for the charity lift to the Big Ten. But
things might happen fast too. Right?
And the Big Ten's not going to come knocking. I've told Oregon fans this for almost a month. They're not coming for you. They're going to see what you can do without USC and UCLA, and they just think it's going to be just perfectly fine. But I'm like, nope. You'll see what I'm talking about.
It's going to be.
I don't get the problem with the Utah fans. I usually get the problem with the Oregon fans because of me being that I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, meaning I come from Big Ten area, meaning I know what I'm talking about the Big Ten. It's like the mob, like I've told you guys before. You don't play with the mob.
Taylor's talking about the big time, Big 12.
The ring and things like that.
Big 12 has good time slots for recruiting, especially because they're in the Midwest and Southeast.
You know what, this is an interesting topic because, you know, a lot of Pac-12 fans have been in my mentions about if you take Colorado and Arizona, you're literally taking the worst football teams. And they're right. And this is the great irony of this potential realignment is by bringing in 2-3 more schools from the Western time zones, you open up that fourth window to the Big 12, which they can do it with BYU on occasion now, but now you can have it virtually every week. You can have a after dark type of game. So Colorado and Arizona oddly have more value to the TV networks in the Big 12 than they do in the Pac-12, which makes no sense when you stop and think about it, but it really is how it plays, because now they're in a conference that doesn't just have the fourth window, it has the first window too.
Yeah.
I don't know how often they'd be in that window, but now
Mhm.
the overall contract for the Big 12 will be the only one really on a weekly basis, unless the Big 10 adds more Pac-12 programs, can offer games from the moment college football kicks off, which is noon Eastern, to the time we're all passing out because it's too late. BYU's playing Baylor, and it's after midnight, and all us old people are going, I hope this isn't a fun game because I got to go to sleep.
Right,
But
exactly.
Big 12 football will be wall
Yeah.
to wall on Saturdays, and that's a unique and valuable thing to have.
Mhm.
It's huge, right?
Yeah,
Like,
plus it also will help Colorado and also Arizona, because then they can get some better recruits from Texas and the other states that they probably don't even have really a chance at. Now that if they move to the Big 12, it would help them because they have affiliations with these schools in this conference to bring these players to them.
hey, did you guys see that Dion seems to support this Big 12 move? There was some stuff that mentioned, like, it seems like he really wants
I
to
wouldn't put
recruit.
it past Dion.
Was there a
Well,
quote or something?
There was a comment about that, and there was a report on Twitter about that.
I
I
didn't
am
see that.
I'm of the belief that they hired Dion for a move to the Big 12.
Yeah, I thought so too.
I think the Big 12 told Colorado, and this was a problem before Colorado left the Big 12, you're not committed enough to college football. I mean, there was a day when Colorado was as good as Oklahoma and Nebraska. And there's been a culture shift in Boulder, kind of away from athletics and not really the academic side, not really supporting athletics. And I think they came to realize finally this is costing us students, it's costing us exposure. We have to get back to that front porch mentality of college athletics. It's not an important part of your house, but it is the most inviting part of your house if you're looking for students. And I think they went out and did exactly what they could do to get the Big 12 and nation's attention by hiring Dion. How long he'll be there, I don't know. But if it puts him back on the college football map, gets him into the Big 12, and maybe some stability with that, ironically, it'll be a great move. And I think they hired him as a play for the Big 12.
I saw some chatter too that the CU fans are reminiscing about the 1990 national championship in the Big 8. It seems like they're thinking about those old times. They want those back.
Well, they haven't done well in the Pac-12, so they got to look for something to be different.
I mean, if I'm a
because
CU
they've
fan,
gotten rickrolled for 13 years, so there's a reason why I would want to change if I was them.
if I'm a CU fan, yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, that's a good move.
It's not always brighter, right?
No.
Yeah, it's not always brighter.
Mhm.
Let's see. Larry's saying he doesn't want to be in the Pac-12 without those two, meaning Oregon and Washington. I don't think anybody would want to be in the league without those two schools.
And there is a growing contingent of Ute fans that are feeling this way, that they're moving towards the Big 12 and really wanting to jump over to the Big 12, especially with the instability with this contract situation with Oregon and Washington. Like, it is happening right now. The momentum is shifting. It's not the majority yet because the Pac's been really good to the Utes. I mean, the Utes have grown so much in the Pac, given them a lot.
Right.
But really, the momentum has shifted. The wave is coming and stuff. So just note that.
Yeah, see, for me, Utah
Mhm.
and TCU are perfect examples of why the Big 12 expanded so wisely. Because both of those schools have not just, they were competitive before. They were playing at Power 5 levels before.
Right.
They just didn't have the brand. And now we've seen them as they elevated to those levels. They're playing a higher level of football. TCU just played for the national championship. Not well at all, but they were in the game. So I think it's amazing, and I think we could certainly see UCF be in that position in the next 5 to 10 years, because I think the Big 12 brought in a proven brand of BYU and a brand that's going to be a monster in 20 years, and that's UCF.
Right.
99% of their alumni are still alive.
Yep.
That is the most stunning stat I've ever heard about a school. It's such a young school. 99% of their alumni are alive.
Yeah, they're going to be incredible in 5 years. They're going to be really, really good. Robert, I'm going to let you go. Thanks for joining us
Thanks, Robert.
tonight.
Oh, this was fun. This was one heck of a fun conversation. If you need me anytime, you can ask.
I will do
Especially
that.
if you need someone that knows a little bit about the Big Ten.
Okay, I will do that. Tomorrow we're having a Big 12 show on Big 12 Mafia, so tune in then. All right. We'll see you later.
Mhm.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, let's see here. We're getting near the end. I want to make a couple of announcements. We'll go ask a couple more questions, then I think we'll wrap it up for tonight. First, please subscribe and follow us on Twitter. That's where a majority of our content is at. We really engage with people on Twitter. I know Fitz does. I know you does, and I do everything I can to do Twitter every day as much as possible. And then make sure that you're subscribing on YouTube. And we just got monetized on YouTube over the weekend, which that's a pretty big deal.
It's huge. It's absolutely enormous.
For something that I started just off the back of a napkin a few months ago. So I'm pretty
it's
excited
a huge
about
step. I talked to another BYU guy about getting on, starting to do his stuff. Jeff is, and of all the videos I've done, I believe this is true. I know most recently it's true. My two biggest have been BYU videos. I had one a month or two ago that had 20,000 views, which, I'm in the 4,000 range. I'm not a big player with these, but monetizing is a big deal, guys. You should be proud of yourselves because then you start reaching more and more people and you really push and it grows. And pretty soon the money, nobody's retired on it, but it's nice to have a buck or two extra.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then I think, maybe those were my two announcements. Did you have anything tonight, Ute, that you wanted to tell everybody?
I just want to see if Fitz has any questions. I mean, this is the time to
talk
to the Utes right here, like the Utes that are listening to me, a diehard Ute fan. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Well, I'm fired up for whatever happens. I don't think members of the Big 12 are rooting for the Pac-12 to break up. I just think we think it's inevitable. And I know the predictions haven't been right about when, but also the moving of the goalposts to when the announcement will make. We've been told so many times the numbers are coming in 2 or 3 weeks, and they never seem to come because I don't think they're good. And I really have come to believe that Silent George, as I like to call him, now that he's been muted kind of by the presidents and chancellors, is waiting for schools to leave. That's his last play. That's his last play. He can't show the numbers because the numbers will break up the conference. So he's waiting for teams to leave before the numbers, and then he can say, wasn't my fault. Big bad Big 12 came and did it.
Whoa.
Does it matter though? Who
Let's
cares?
talk about this a little bit more. This is really, I mean, it's an interesting thought. So we're talking
to George. I think it matters.
So we're talking like maybe like letting CU and U of A walk. Then, like, how many schools do you think he could lose? Like,
well, I think he knows the conference is done no matter what.
I don't think that matters.
Yeah,
why does it matter if the conference loses all their blue bloods? And I say blue bloods in a conference sense, not in overall college football. Why does that make a difference?
And I always come back to this. This is a kind of I think he's an upgrade from Larry Scott. I mean, I think a raccoon might have been an upgrade from Larry Scott, but because at least they're cute. But you have to come back and point to the presidents and chancellors for their hiring of these leaders, because they just haven't done a good job with it. They absolutely haven't. And if you look at the Big 12, they suffered because of leadership, in part because they weren't real strong leaders, but also they were so beholden to Texas. Right. We saw Bob Bowlesby shake out of that and have a strong finish, and now Brett Yormark. I think the Big 12 hired well, and I don't think the Pac-12 really let George kind of do his thing. I think they've kind of had him bottled up a little bit, and it's just the overall leadership of the conference is going to really cost him.
Right. Yeah, it's still a shock factor for a lot of fans too. And like,
I agree.
You had men, right? When less than 2 years ago, guys, like the Pac was in a strong place, right? And they pulled that stunt of not expanding.
Yeah,
they had it.
Pride,
that was exactly it.
Pride goeth before the fall.
Unbelievable. Just think about what those admins are actually like thinking about. Like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? Like, this is a 180, and like it's emotionally tough to kind of deal with, right? But like, that's the reality of the situation.
Larry's given us a comment here. He says, "Don't hate me, Big 12 fans. Try to get to know me." I hope you don't hate any Utah fans. I know a bunch of Utah fans personally, and they're the most passionate footballers that you'll ever meet, and I think they'd be
Again.
great additions to the Big 12.
Exactly why they should be in the Big 12.
Yeah, I
agree.
agree. Sergeant Pickles has popped in here. I wanted to say hi, Sergeant. How you doing? Good to see you. And here's a question from James Hester. Why is Arizona State not getting the buzz of leaving the Pac-12 like Colorado and Arizona?
They've kind of been hands off a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
I think they've been playing. They know once it happens, they'll go, and they've been, kind of sitting there on the fence a little bit. But it's a tough measurement. If they really only want to add 3 and they pick up Colorado and Arizona, does that turn into just a showdown between Utah and Arizona State to get that last spot?
I've been saying that for months, that Utah better not sleep on it because they might find their slot gone.
Yeah. Again, does he want 3 out west, or will he go for 4?
Right.
I tend to think it's 3, but if you can add 4 legitimate Power 5 institutions like the 4 corner schools, he might be tempted just to do it and figure it out later.
I agree. I've got on Thursday afternoon, I actually am doing a Big 12 Mafia show with a rep from both Arizona and Arizona State are going to be on that show. A couple of fans that feel very passionate about their schools, and I guess by Thursday there might be some news to be reported at that time. So we'll sort of have to keep our fingers crossed on that.
I think no news is good news for the Pac. News is very bad news. And I guess maybe if George is wanting schools to leave, maybe it's all good news.
Maybe if George goes, I've got $35 million per school in my back pocket, and we'll all go, oh, okay, it's over. None of this is happening. But I got to tell you, talking about it's coming down this week because I'm having deja vu really badly. I feel like I've done this 4 times. It's coming.
Right.
But I do feel like June has kind of been the marker where things will start really breaking.
Yep.
All right, very good. Let me just check here if there's any other last comments. Dave in Arizona, yeah, he's one that chats and definitely talks about representing Arizona as a state, and I think those schools are powerful. I would love to have them in the Big 12.
Great recruiting grounds. Growing.
Yeah, who doesn't want to go to Phoenix on vacation?
No doubt.
During football season. All right. Well, anything else, Fitz, you want to give us before we sign off tonight?
Thanks for having me on, boys, and congratulations on the growth. This thing's took off. Your timing's been perfect with this. It's well done. So congratulations on that. And let's hope this turns into a regular conference call, if you want to say it that way. About the Big 12 conference. And again, I'm really struck by the irony that the Big 8, that did have Colorado in it, but Big 8, Big 12 is going to be a conference that could very well end up with the mountains of West Virginia, the mountains of Colorado, the mountains of Utah, and the mountains of Arizona in it. And I think that's really funny. I just think that's beautiful, and I can't wait to go visit all of them.
It's very symbolic, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
I agree with you. Yeah, I think so too. Tomorrow we have Greg Swaim on Big 12 Mafia. So if you're here, it won't be the same time. It'll be an hour later. So it'll be kicking off at 9 Eastern. So please join me then. Otherwise, everybody have a great night. Thanks for joining us. And just ride or die. Let's go Big 12.
Thanks, Fitz.
Yeah, see you later, Fitz. Thanks for coming.
You bet. You bet.
Okay, bye-bye.